something I approach with such a careful tremor always. I feel the finally foolish question of how it is then supposed to be felt, and by whom. I remember once in a rented room on 27th Street, the woman I loved then, literally, after we had made love on the large bed, sitting across from a basin with two faucets. She had to pee, but was nervous, embarrassed, I suppose. I would watch her, who had but a moment ago been completely open to me, naked, on the same bed, squatting, her head reflected in the mirror, the hair dark there, the full of her face, the shoulders, sat spread-legged, turned on one faucet and shyly pissed. What love might learn from such a sight. The woman. I have never clearly given to you the associations you have for me. You, with such divided presence, my dream does not show you. I do not dream. I have compounded these sensations, the accumulation of the things left me by you. Always your tits, not breasts, but harsh sudden rises of impatient flesh on the chest. Is it mine which flower against the vagueness of the air you move in? You walk such a shortness of intent strides, your height is so low. In my hand I feel the weight of yours there, one over one, or both, as you pivot upon me, the same weight grown as the hair, the second of your attributes, falls to cover us. We couple but lie against no surface, have lifted as you again grow small, against myself, into the air, the third of the signs you are known by, a quiet, a soughing silence, the winds lightly moved. Then your mouth, it opens, not speaking, touches wet on me. Then I scream, I sing such as is given to me, roaring unheard, like stark sight sees itself inverted into dark, turned, onanistic. I feel around myself what you have left me with, wetness, pools of it. My skin drips.
The word is the word warring.
Wait a minute now. Whereabouts? Roar. It's a had roaring.
Is it divided in the...
Yeah, roaring, unheard, like stark sight sees itself inverted. It's a curiously hard one to get to. That is the wanting to say particularly what this kind of selection was all about, as I felt. That you could simply sit down with the very same possibility of material and produce an entirely different reaction. That this was a one day's reading, or 20 years reading perhaps, almost. But at least it was one way to feel about these poems, but by no means the whole of all he's done. And I call attention to Duncan's essay on Charles, and then the one by Ed Doran. Because, I think those selected writings get so damned superciliously authoritative, and they're just a way of reading, that's all.
Except that it's better than that implication of an Olson reader.
Oh, yeah. Well, Charles, happily, I wanted a selected writings, and then Lachlan had actually first suggested it, and then had questioned it, and then wanted an Olson reader, which it's a spurious kind of...
Well, that sense of like what a book is stated as Guffey's readers,
Yeah.
Like you don't have a reader on Charles Olson.
Well, it becomes like entertainment, the bedside companion, the Esquire
it's like
anthology.
Introduction to Charles Olson.
No.
Wow. Okay.
No, it's selected writings, and
well, that makes sense.
And I am literally the man who selected them, so therefore I take that position in reference to them, but don't wish to exclude other selections. In other words, this is an invitation to reading in a more actual manner what this man has accomplished, what he's made evident. otherwise it gets to be so dead.
We were thinking for a while of trying to construct a film around your an essay of yours that appeared in was it Yale?
Yeah. That's
because it happens that we filmed
almost
a great number of
those people. Yeah.
And like you quote John Wiener's
Poem for Painters. At last I come to the last
What a
defense.
great idea. You mean just to take the essay,
take the essay and
use it as a covering.
That was Don Allen gave me that chance, so to speak. He and Gary were here about a year ago. It was lovely when Gary was first back in the States, and they came in the early summer. Remember the cherry trees were all in bloom. We had a beautiful time, and Don had this offer, in effect, or this invitation to edit an anthology of New American writing for Penguin. But then the only dilemma with that anthology is simply that Robert chose not to be in it. And Robert is a key figure in its relationships. But then that always, I mean, the point is that these circumstances are political in the sense that people perhaps mistake. They're not political in the sense of people arguing for power, but they're political in the sense that they're each person wanting reasonably to identify his own commitment without confusion of other persons or of other, obligations that are not to them evident. So that Robert makes an absolute condition of a absolute decision on the part of the man who's editing, which he feels, not so much that Don bypasses, but he questions Don's circumstance simply that Don, he feels, is not primarily a writer, therefore that the anthology must of necessity be more generalized than it ought to be. I don't agree,
Do you have
frankly.
such a thing as singular politics like that?
All politics is singular.
Isn't politics like polis, P-O-L-I?
It ought to be, but it turns out it ought to be. It should be the
Politics is how one addresses oneself to people.
Politics is the art that involves the conduct of a community. I mean, politics has to do, I would assume, naively, to do with the conduct of a community. That is, the conduct of persons living in an aggregate rather than a singular manner.
Yeah.
That is, what do you do about the streets, or the fact that the lights go off at 10 o'clock at night, or how do you conduct yourself in relation to other people? Not, how do you impose upon them your necessities, but how do you recognize necessities common to all in living in an aggregate, a town?
Yeah.
I'll just stand back here and play for a while.
Yeah.